You are watching Capitol View, an opportunity for the people of Arkansas's 4th Congressional District to get an inside look into the issues before the U.S. Congress and how our Congressman Mike Ross is working on your behalf. Now, from Washington, D.C., here's your Congressman, Mike Ross.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Capitol View. I'm Mike Ross, your United States Congressman and your host for Capitol View. And as I do on most programs, I go out in the halls of Congress and I find one of my colleagues to come on the show and to join me so we can learn more about the people I serve with, as well as the issues that confront us, some tough issues confronting us here in our nation's capital. And I always try to be bipartisan about this. I'm a conservative Democrat, and sometimes I have Democrats on the show, sometimes I have Republicans on the show, and I am delighted today to be joined by one of my colleagues, not only in Congress, but from Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District, a new member of Congress, now in his second year, Congressman Steve Womack. And Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your long-standing service to not only your district, but our country, our state and our country, in what will have been your 6th term as a member of the House of Representatives.
Well, thank you. Thanks. This is my last term. I chose not to seek re-election this year, but I've still got almost a year left, and I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can every day and do my best to do my job and represent the people all the way throughout this year and until the end of my term. But I've really enjoyed getting to know you. We had crossed paths when you were mayor of Rogers, and when you would make trips here, or we'd see each other in Arkansas. But I've really enjoyed getting to know you and to serve with you in the Congress. Now, your district, it's John Bozeman's old district. It's the 3rd Congressional District in Arkansas, which is basically northwest Arkansas, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, and Springdale, and Rogers, and Bentonville. And what all does your district include?
Well, Mike, a lot of people refer to it as the Northwest Arkansas District, and that might be a little bit sensitive to people down in the Valley area, Fort Smith over to Russellville. But as the district stands today, as we do this report, as you well know, I have Johnson and Franklin counties and Madison County that are part of my 3rd district. But I go basically from the Fort Smith region all the way to the Missouri border, Bella Vista, and then over to the Flippin area, Bull Shoals area in Marion County, and then back down to Pope County, where Russellville is. Then it follows Interstate 40 back to Fort Smith. So that entire area is the 3rd district as we know it today. But as you well know, because of redistricting and the balancing of population, I was overweight by the better part of 100,000 people. And I knew going into this redistricting that I was going to lose, or the 3rd district would lose, a significant share. Just how we did that became, I think, the issue. But at the end of the day, they ended up taking parts of Sebastian and Crawford and part of Newton, but all of Johnson, Franklin, and Madison counties, and they carved out a wedge that comes up into the 3rd district. So now the 3rd district goes from Fort Smith up to Bella Vista, over to the lake area in Marion County, down to Russellville, but a huge chunk of that middle is now taken out and will go to the 4th district in the next year.
And that's a result of redistricting, which occurs after the census every 10 years. And basically, we have 4 members of Congress from Arkansas. There's basically a congressman for every 730,000 people, and so some states get 1, some states get 50. Arkansas gets 4. And my district, I started off with 26 counties and now have 29, and now it will be 33 counties. Almost half the counties in Arkansas will be in the 4th Congressional District.
And that is tough, Mike, as you know, because while we would all like to think that everybody in Arkansas is cut from the same cloth and the issues are the same, you have to understand that the challenge for who replaces you to be able to service the very deep part of the 4th district down on the Louisiana border and go all the way to within 1 county of Missouri is a real heavy lift for that representative.
Yeah, we knew the real challenge, and of course the districts are drawn by the state legislature, not us, And we knew going into it that it was going to be challenging, quite frankly, as you mentioned earlier, because of the growth in Northwest Arkansas. Basically, my district needed to pick up about 75,000 people. The first congressional district needed to pick up about 45,000 people. The second district only needed to lose about 20,000 people. You needed to shed about 100,000 people to where we all represent the same number of people. And the real challenge in this occurred, you know, if you look at it, a lot of people think of Little Rock, the financial center, the capital center of our state, and it certainly is. But I think most people don't realize the growth in Northwest Arkansas versus Central Arkansas. Basically, 2 counties in Northwest Arkansas, Benton and Washington, grew 5 times faster than about 10 counties in Central Arkansas. So the second district only needed to lose about 20,000 people. And of course, my district will now include Yale County as a result of that. But your district needed to lose about 100,000 people. So, you know, there were a lot of plans out there, and I'm not sure there's ever a good plan. But I know at one time they were talking about putting Fayetteville in the 4th Congressional District, and some folks thought that was too far north for the 4th District. So the compromise was to put Jasper and Huntsville in the 4th, which, according to my map, maybe
still
even
pretty
further
north. Still pretty north
than Fayetteville. I think the 4th District now comes within about 12 miles of the Missouri border, takes in the Texas-Oklahoma border, goes within 1 county of the Mississippi border, and takes in almost the entire Louisiana border. So very large,
tough.
Very rural district indeed.
If I might, let me just say one more thing about redistricting and its impact on the future. And I shared this with the Alma Chamber of Commerce banquet the other night, that Alma was split, as you know. The city of Alma, 71 highway comes down to 64, and it splits. That to the east is going to be in the 4th, and that to the west will be in the 3rd. I know because I firmly believe that whoever emerges out of the 4th District, be they a Democrat or a Republican, that area of your district, future district, will be well served because they'll have 2 members of Congress paying attention to what's going on in that part of Crawford County. I'll deal with it, and I know the other member will deal with it. We won't have to pull out our GPS to determine whether or not we really need to take care of that constituent's needs. They'll be well served. Let the members discern how we're going to do that, but the people should understand that they're going to get very, very good treatment from either of these persons, I'm sure.
And a little bit of history on that. In the past, our state legislature has not split counties, but as it turns out, we were about the only state left. I think with more than 2 members of Congress that did not split counties, and the courts have clearly ruled that the districts had to be drawn where we represent nearly the identical same number of
people,
and so there were a few counties, a few cities divided up, which has been done in the past. It's just been done on county lines. I used to represent the Scott County side of Mansfield, for example, and you had the Sebastian County side of Mansfield. So it has been done before, and I have no doubt that you and whoever follows me will ensure that it's a smooth transition and that we take care of the folks back home. Now, you're from the 3rd District. You grew up in Russellville. You were mayor of Rogers for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I think my background is somewhat unique to the 3rd District because, as you've indicated, I'm a native of Pope County, Arkansas. I was born at Russellville, and while I spent a good portion of my youthful years up in Missouri when my family relocated to Missouri, my dad was in broadcasting, we moved back to Arkansas, and I went to high school and college there. So I'm a graduate of Russellville High School, graduate of Arkansas Tech, received my commission in the military there. And then in 1979, right after I graduated from college, I moved to Northwest Arkansas, where my family got involved in a broadcast operation up there. So that's how we came to be in Northwest Arkansas. Since '79, I've been in Northwest Arkansas that entire time and have served as a mayor of Rogers, in addition to some other things in my background.
So, and I think that's helpful to have that kind of background before coming to Congress. I mean, you have had a history of having to work not only with people, but with the city council, and of course you were in the military too.
Yeah, 30 years.
Colonel.
30 years, 5 months, and 19 days, if we're counting. Retired in '09. My last assignment was commanding a training regiment out of Little Rock. But I want to go back to what you said just a moment ago, because I think sometimes this gets lost on people. Mike, you're a good example, a great example of how when you are from the area that you represent, you know what the heartbeat is. You have a finger on the pulse. You understand completely the issues that are dynamic to your region. The 4th District of Arkansas is going to be different than the 3rd District of Arkansas. So I think it's a very important point that people understand that where possible, elect people that understand, that have their roots there, that understand the issues that drive the people of that region. And I think yours is a great example of that. And I think what I bring to the Northwest Arkansas, the 3rd District, being in Northwest Arkansas for a long time, a businessman, a financial consultant, military guy, and a mayor, and having been born and reared in Russellville, high school and college, those are 2 critical parts of the 3rd District. And I think it's very important that you know a lot about your district if you're going to adequately serve it.
Absolutely. And as you know, I never moved to Washington. And after the last vote each week, I'm always on the very next flight back home to Arkansas to
many times we're on the same flight.
Absolutely. Yeah. To get out among the people. I think that's an important part of our job. If you're going to represent people, if you're truly going to represent them, then it goes beyond the title representative. It goes to really getting out and listening to them and taking their issues and concerns back to our nation's capital and being their advocate, being their voice.
It's very important work, and it's not just during a campaign season, although anymore it's kind of hard to discern between campaigns because it's almost year-round anymore. But no, I've long admired, when I was a mayor and I had interaction with people like yourself, and then even before Tim Griffin, Vic Snyder and Marion Barry and the folks that represented the delegation, and of course my own representative, John Bozeman, you know, I paid attention to what you guys were doing, not because I aspired one day to be there, but because it's just what mayors do. They interact with their federal delegation on all sides. And I've long admired what you've represented there to the people in the 4th District.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, you got here about a year ago. You landed on your feet and hit the ground running and got an appointment to the prized House Appropriations Committee. Tell us about that.
Well, I knew that based on numbers, there were, as you well know, 60-some new members to the 87 total, but new faces on the GOP side, and that the makeup of the House was going to change because there was a new majority. And I knew that Speaker Boehner, I anticipated him being the Speaker, I knew that Speaker Boehner would be probably predisposed to considering members of the freshman class just on sheer numbers to some of these more high-profile committees. And you understand it because you sit on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and those are select committees. Those are what we call the A-list. That's what people aspire to do, and many times, Mike, they have to be here a long time to find a seat there. But I knew based on numbers that somebody from the freshman class was going to get a seat on Appropes or get a seat on Ways and Means or Energy and Commerce, Financial Services. And so I thought, you know, I think I'm qualified. I've got a unique background. And I made my case to Speaker Boehner, and then I made my case on appropriations to the chairman, Hal Rogers. And honestly, you know, with a little smile, I think the fact that I was the mayor of Rogers, that Hal Rogers, that endeared me to him. But I was honored to have a seat, got 3 great subcommittees. I vice chair one of them, Energy and Water. And I hope to be able to use that position to do the very best I can to represent the interests of not only the 3rd District, but all of Arkansas.
And these are tough times, especially to be on the Appropriations Committee, because you are the ones that recommend where we spend the money, and the fact is there's not enough money.
Yeah.
And there's enough money. The problem is that we need to cut spending.
We got to cut spending, and you and I hear it, and we talk about a lot. The fact is that the Appropriations Committee, once upon a time, because of its role in the process, was a coveted seat for many, many reasons, unlike they are today. Now, as Hal Rogers says, we're kind of the Disappropriations Committee. It's our job to be able to cut each one of these titles, each one of these, we do 12 appropriations bills each year. It's to cut those things down, get control of federal spending, put it back to levels that are consistent with where our economy was once upon a time, and try to help create a climate of job creation, economic growth. And that has been a very, very difficult challenge. As you know, we get bombarded by people that that really want us to help them. And I understand that. But at this stage of the game, in the climate we're in right now, we have to look at the total federal spending package and bring this under control.
We cannot continue to spend more than we
Exactly.
take in. And we've got to cut spending, and we've got to do it in a way that's fair, it's equitable,
Absolutely.
and that there's a shared sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Congressman Steve Womack from Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District, our guest on this edition of Capitol View. I'm Mike Ross, your United States Congressman and your host. Stay with us. We'll return in just a moment. Hi, I'm Mike Ross, your United States Congressman. Taking a newcomer hunting is a great way to pass along an outdoor tradition. Annually, through dedicated taxes on hunting equipment and license fees, hunters pay over $225 million to support wildlife management. What are you waiting for? Introduce someone to hunting, and you'll be spending quality time together and helping to conserve wildlife in America. Well, welcome back to Capitol View. I'm Mike Ross, your United States Congressman and your host, and my guest on this edition of Capitol View is Congressman Steve Womack from Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District. Steve, thanks again for spending some time with me today. And you know, too often when you watch the national news, regardless of which cable news channel you pick, it looks like Democrats and Republicans can't work together in our nation's capital. And so I think hopefully this is an example to our constituents and to the people back home that you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and yet we can work together.
Well, you know, Mike, that's a great point, and let me say this about that. I realize, having come from the media, that media loves controversy. They love sensationalism. And when people are working together, that's not a real sensational thing. But they thrive because they sell TV time and headlines. They thrive on the things that sometimes divide us as a people. And while we have our distinct differences, ideological differences, there are a lot of things, particularly in a state like Arkansas, where we share a whole lot in common. And the political beliefs are not too distinctly separate like they would be in some other areas. So that said, I have gone out of my way to look for ways, as you have, to reach across the aisle and find the things on which we can agree and work carefully on those things. You know, we sit together at the State of the Union addresses, and we have worked very closely on issues of vital importance to our state, including the most recent that you've helped me on immensely, the U.S. Marshals Museum commemorative coin. You know, I've worked with Jackie Spear on the Main Street Fairness legislation, and worked with Jim Himes on a community banking piece of legislation. So there are many examples where we do work together. It's not going to get reported very often, but it's something that I do look forward to every time I have an opportunity to reach. I try to do that.
We just don't make for good TV. The folks you see on TV, they set them next to one another, they give them each a microphone, they turn them up as loud as they go, and then they sit there and scream at each other. And in my opinion, we need a lot less screaming in Washington and a lot more. Instead of screaming at one another, we need to be talking to one another. Well,
I have a great deal of respect for the opinions represented by the other side, even when we disagree. I just think that this is what makes it. This is part of America. It's part of the genius of our country, the way the construct of our government. But there are going to be competing interests, and it's just that's just the way things are. But I have a great deal of respect. I enjoy listening to the other side, and I always enjoy the context of the debate when I call it missionary work. Sometimes I'm trying to sell my point of view to the other side, but that's just the way our government is designed to work, and I think it's part of our genius, really.
Let's talk a little bit about the U.S. Marshals Museum and the coin. You and I worked very closely on the coin. It was H.R. 886, the United States Marshal Service 225th Anniversary Commemorative Coin Act. And so let's talk a little bit about the museum, which is planned for Fort Smith, Arkansas, to provide a history of the U.S. Marshal Service for the entire United States of America. And how was Fort Smith selected for the site?
Well, it all happened before I became a member of Congress. This effort was underway. In fact, the site was selected. And I'm not privy to all of how this whole thing got its genesis, but thankfully we had a great group of people working collectively both at the city level, in the Marshals Service level, and our congressional delegation level, to compete favorably for the site. At the end of the day, a few years ago, that site was selected out of I guess a top 10 eventually, and then it got pared down to maybe the top 2 or 3, and then Fort Smith was selected. Since that time, part of the fundraising strategy was to mint a coin commemorating the 225th anniversary of the Marshal Service, to get it approved through Congress, signed by the President, and that the U.S. Mint would mint certain coins that would be sold to investors, collectors, and then the proceeds, without any taxpayer money involved, the proceeds would go toward certain things for the Marshal Service, collection of the, preservation of the collection, this sort of thing. But as you know, as a member of Congress, to get something like that approved in the House, it has to come up under what we call suspension. And to get suspension status, you have to have 290 co-sponsors. And Mike, that's a heavy lift, as you know. And so John Bozeman had worked on it before in a previous Congress and did not quite get there. And so we picked it up again, filed the bill in March, and in about 6 months, with thanks in large measure to what you were able to bring to the table with your side of the aisle, we were able to get the 290 plus votes to get this on the suspension calendar, and right before Christmas we were able to get it on the floor, get it approved, and then once it gets approved in the Senate and signed by the President, that Marshall's coin will be done, and the proceeds, upwards of $5 million toward the preservation of the collection of the U.S. Marshal Service, will be made possible. So Mike, I got to thank you for what you did in that entire effort, and it's going to pay huge dividends for years and years to come when the Marshal Service is a reality.
And I think we've got a depiction of the proposed museum to be located in Fort Smith. It will be a national museum. It'll be representing and honoring all U.S. Marshal Service folks from the past as well as the future. And if you look at the photo, it's done in a way to actually look like a U.S. Marshal's badge.
Yes, and it sits on the banks of the Arkansas River. And given the job losses in Fort Smith, I've often said that Fort Smith is due a little love right now, and so this is a wonderful thing for the great city of Fort Smith and the western Arkansas area to have this become a reality, and I'm so looking forward to this museum getting under construction.
And it's not being paid for with taxpayer money, either from proceeds from the sale of the coin or through the foundation, where
they will have
they're
a
actively working to raise money.
They will have a national fundraising campaign, and I am quite confident that it's going to be a huge success.
And I was in the House, worked with then Congressman John Bozeman, and supported the site being located in Fort Smith. It made sense for a lot of reasons. We all know the U.S. Marshal Service remains the nation's oldest federal law enforcement agency. But Fort Smith was also home to Judge Parker's courthouse, and Fort Smith became the center of law and order in the western United States throughout much of the late 19th century. In fact, Charles Portis, who's from my district, his 1968 novel True Grit raised the profile of marshals quite a bit, and there's recently been a remake of that as well. But tell us a little bit about how the coin will work, and people will be able to buy them, I guess.
Yeah, they'll be able to buy them, and since this is the first go-round for me on a commemorative coin, my understanding is that the Mint can do 2 per year, and I want to say this one's going to be a couple of years down the road, that this coin will be designed, it will be minted, and then it will be offered for sale in a couple of different denominations to investors and collectors that have an interest in those kinds of things. And I'm not a numismatic sort of person, so I can't tell you all of the secrets ins and outs of coin collecting, but I understand that there is a tremendous sector of the public, both in the country and worldwide, that do collect these kinds of things and pay a premium for them. And so when they're offered for sale, I'm sure there'll be a limited number of those available. And as I said, upwards of $5 million of proceeds go. And then there are a couple of nonprofits that benefit also from this. So it's a win-win situation. It's a win for the Marshal Service. It's a win for some of the nonprofits it will benefit. And it's a great win for the city of Fort Smith and the tourism sector of the western Arkansas area, because it's going to be a must-see place when people come to the western part of Arkansas.
And it will be a first-class national museum that will properly honor our U.S. Marshals, including
Absolutely.
those who've died in the line of duty.
Absolutely.
In service to our country. I-49, Interstate 49. They've been talking about Interstate 49 since 1908, and we're seeing progress on it. During my time in Congress, we've almost completed the section from Texarkana to the Louisiana line, which will connect I-30 with I-20 in Louisiana. There's also been a lot of work on it around Bella Vista and Fort Smith, and you and I co-chair the I-49 Congressional Caucus. The Transportation Reauthorization Bill may be done this year, and of course that's an interstate project that you and I both have a great interest in, that someday will connect Canada with the port of New Orleans. But these are the kind of projects that not only create jobs while we're building them, but can really create a lot more economic activity along the entire corridor.
Mike, let's just look at what's happened already in terms of interstate development and how it has affected Arkansas and how it has helped elevate a very important part of our area, which happens to be in my district, and that's the area north of the Hopper Tunnel. The growth and expansion of the Benton and Washington County area in no small way has been influenced by what we were able to do by getting that beautiful highway, Interstate 540, from Interstate 40 around Alma up to the city of Bella Vista. And I mean, you just have to, when people come, if you haven't been up there, for people watching the show, if you haven't been up there in many years, you ought to go up there and just kind of take a look around and see what infrastructure development does in creating the climate on which massive expansion of an economic base can take place. We think, in fact, we strongly believe that similar infrastructure, that is Interstate 540, the I-49 area, bridging the Arkansas River, moving on around Fort Smith, and then eventually getting on down through the mountainous region to the Texarkana area, to the area you're talking of, will do similar things for that area of Arkansas that 540 did in the Northwest Corridor. So I am a huge believer. Look, I was a mayor of a city, the largest city in Benton County, that prospered immeasurably from the development of that interstate highway system. We did over $1 billion in development in our city alone over the last 10 years. So I can speak firsthand about the importance of infrastructure and infrastructure building, good investment grade infrastructure, and what it does to lift an area. So Fort Smith is going to benefit, and all of the area in the 4th District down in the southwest part of the state will hugely benefit. The problem is, as you know, it's expensive. And the Highway Trust Fund doesn't have the kind of money necessary to dedicate to these high priority corridors. But little by little, over time, we'll make this a reality, and the people of Arkansas will be well served by it.
The section from Winnipeg, Canada to Kansas City now complete. Now we've got to complete the section from Kansas City down to New Orleans. It won't happen overnight, but we are making progress, and you and I are committed to continuing on that.
My dad says, success is a cinch by the inch, hard by the yard. And I think this is going to be the example of the I-49 corridor. We'll do it in pieces, but we'll get there.
Keystone XL pipeline, that's the proposed pipeline to bring up to 1 million barrels of oil a day from Canada to our refineries in the Gulf. It'll create up to 100,000 jobs while we build the pipeline. It will reduce our dependence on foreign oil by 1 million barrels of oil a day once it's completed. It's something you and I support. Common sense.
Common sense. Well, first of all, there's already a Keystone pipeline, and I think that gets lost in the discussion sometimes. We're talking about the Keystone XL, another piece of this pipeline that, as you say, brings a tremendous energy security resource, the tar sands in Canada, to the Gulf of Mexico. And Mike, I think the number was like a $7 billion construction project, 20,000 jobs, as you say, upwards of 100,000 during construction. And then I think sometimes lost in the discussion is the fact that we continue to I think, hurt for a good energy security policy for our country. We're importing a lot of oil from areas of the world that don't think very highly of us, and I think anytime you can access the resources that you have close by or even under your own feet in your own country is always a good thing. But yeah, we've been in strong support of that. We've had a little trouble getting the president to go along with it, but we think Keystone is a critical piece of economic development that needs immediate attention, and we're going to continue to try to keep.
If we can get 1 million barrels of oil a day from our allies, our friends right here in North America,
absolutely,
why continue to purchase that 1 million barrels of oil a day from folks in the Middle East and unstable countries where too much of that money we're sending them is ending up in the hands of the terrorists that want to destroy us? So common sense energy policy, another area where you and I agree.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the program today.
Mike, thank you so much for your longstanding service to the 4th District and to all of Arkansas. It's a real honor.
Steve Womack from Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District, our guest on this edition of Capitol View. I'm Mike Ross, your United States Congressman. Thanks for spending some time with us. We'll see you next time.